What is good, everyone? This is your host, Deanna Radulescu with Label Free. To live your best life, you must live label free. And I'm back with another incredible guest. My next guest is a consultant, speaker, coach, author. She drives change, talent development, and effective leadership worldwide with GTDS. Please welcome Amanda Van Der Heiden. Amanda, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
I'm excited to talk to you. We've had no issues like having a great conversation, and your story is great and I want to highlight that. So, let's kind of start off with GTDS and what you do at that company.
Yeah, so Global Talent Development Solutions. I know it's a mouthful, that's why we say GTDS. But it really is that specializing in learning and development, how to help people and companies be as successful as they can be worldwide. So I've worked with people. Last I counted, we're at about 40 clients in 15 countries and 12
Wow.
industries. So it really spans outside of the norm some people are so niche and they have very
Yeah.
specific things. For me, I've gotten to work with people from all over the world, from all different levels, starting their career, ending their career, everything in between. And the fun part about that is you start to see trends
Mm.
across people and how can you help people be set them up for success.
Yeah, you've worked with some really big names. I was looking at your website and that's like congratulations to you. I can't even imagine what it's been like to connect with some of those companies and help them improve their leadership and they're just like the development of their leadership style. Because I'm assuming that you go in and you work with them and try to see where they could improve.
Yeah, absolutely. So even when I first started, my very first job right out of undergrad, out of college, was with a huge organization. It was actually with Morgan Stanley. And I was so surprised starting off back in 2008 with them and that was a pivotal time and change, obviously, but just seeing some of these companies and back then we weren't doing video conferences. They couldn't see my face,
Yeah.
right? And so a lot of times I was working with leaders from all over the world without having ever actually been in the room with them. And so one of the biggest compliments I always got, especially very early on in my career, was, wait a second, you're the person who's been telling me how to run my business and be better than my
Yeah.
people. And I'm like, but is it working? A
Yeah.
lot of times especially early on, I do have a baby face for those of seeing me.
Yeah.
But I have 20 years of experience, don't be fooled. And so people are always surprised by that. But I'm saying it's not about and I tell this to across for all of you listeners out there. It doesn't matter how long you've been in an industry or not been in the industry, you can add value right away. And just by sharing your perspective. If you're fresh, that's great. You're new to it, you're seeing it with fresh eyes. If
Yeah.
you're 20 years in, great. You have perspectives of trends. And so there's always value people can add. So I will say that, especially early on in my career, people are always blown away. And still sometimes I get this where they're like, wow, I didn't and people have always said to me, like, how are you, like, a lot of these organizations have such large companies, so many leaders, it's so hard to get anything accomplished. How are you always consistently
Yeah.
getting results for these people? And part of that is the fact that we work, it's about the result, it's about
Yeah.
the impact instead of, how do you cut through that red tape? And I've always been good at cutting through red tape.
That's awesome. Um, that's good. They need people like you, right? That can help them with that because I think that when they're in that position, they kind of lose sight of the big picture. And so, I mean, especially in today's world. So when you started versus to where things are today, how has the leadership style needed to change and evolve that you've helped companies with? Because it's had to. It's had to change with the times.
Oh, absolutely. And I will say one of the biggest things is the awareness. So even if you're looking like 20, 10, even 10 years ago, the awareness that people had over certain things, only certain groups knew about it, right?
Yeah.
Maybe HR, maybe L&D, which is learning and development groups knew about this. Some people just did it naturally, but in today's world, even like the layperson is very familiar with servant leadership and
Yeah.
situational awareness. And so a lot of the vernacular and like the wording that people use and the understanding behind the different leadership styles, that's been a big change too. But I would say, and I'm sure a lot of people would say, that COVID, the pandemic, actually really highlighted something that people who have been in the industry for a long time already knew, but
Yeah.
it really emphasized what good leadership versus poor leadership looks like, right?
Oh
And
yeah.
I think what a lot of companies found and are still finding, as some people return to office or continue to keep remote, flexible schedules for their people worldwide, it's funny that the best leaders are the ones where they kind of intuitively know this stuff, but they
Yeah.
really practice what they preach and they focus on communication. They focus on people first,
Yeah.
right? And I think that a lot of the problems that a lot of the larger organizations experience when they went work from home for the first time, it was showing what was already there, but it was
Yeah.
magnified.
Oh yeah. Yeah. What they called it, there was the great when people were just quitting jobs like left and right. What did they call it? I forgot during
Oh,
COVID.
yes, yes, yes. Oh, that was a couple years ago. Oh my goodness. Yes.
You know what I'm talking
I
about?
do know what you're talking about. I can't think of it right now off the top of my head, but yeah, I do. Uh,
I
it was
highlighted that.
catchy too. We'll have to look it up.
Yeah, I highlighted that like there was a couple conversations that I had during that time period where we were talking about like this great um when resignation or great whatever it was,
Yeah,
and just like how like there was a lot that was brought to light in the corporate world that needed to be fixed because how unhappy people were. It forced
yeah,
people to look at like they just weren't happy in the workplace, and they had to like a lot of large companies from what I remember reading had to restructure and like kind of put the employee first. Am I mean, did you experience that in the people that you were working with during that time?
so a lot of the companies, it's funny, I had been 8 years work from home pre-pandemic.
Oh,
So at the beginning days, I was, companies were like, how do we do this? How do we manage people
yeah,
remotely? And it's like, well, it goes back to what have you been doing in the office? And let's see the good practices and the bad practices. In the office, a lot of leaders, they leverage the water cooler tactic, right?
yeah,
So they bump into someone, oh, by the way, I need that report. Oh, you did a great
yeah,
job. Good job, but you had to be more intentional. So when you're not just bumping into people, you have to be very intentional with your time and your messaging.
yeah.
But honestly, good leaders were doing that before the pandemic. Again, it's the pandemic really highlighted and emphasized the deficit of communication, the deficit of being intentional, how you're giving feedback and how you're supporting your people.
Yeah. So when does a company, at what point does a company need to like seek someone like you out and seek GTDS out to work with?
Yeah, so what I specialize is in these large scale global rollouts when you have these massive things happening across the organization. It might be a culture transformation, it might be a new initiative. So when Morgan Stanley and Smith Barney merged, they had to train up 10,000 employees in 1 year. So we brought on 550 contract trainers and
Oh,
we trained up 10,000 people. When Quest Diagnostics bought
wow.
out a competitor in 5 states, we had to train all the doctors and nurses and administrators in 5 states and in a small amount of time. And so I joke that really what I do is I organize the chaos, right?
Yeah.
Do you have the right people? Do you have the right processes? Do you have the right systems? Do you have the right tools? And we're going through this another pivotal thing in the world. As we know, AI is a huge topic right now. How people are leveraging it, how are companies rolling it out or not? And so from that perspective, it's been a lot of that as well. So to summarize that. So basically, when there is a point of change within an organization, you need someone who can look at the macro level of
Okay.
what is everything in flight and what's the downstream impact. So I've been called a lot of things, but I always joke a rose by any other name. We talk about labels here. I love
Yeah.
the name of the podcast, but it doesn't matter what the name of what people call me is. At the end of the day, it's bringing people together to
Yeah.
make sure that we're all rowing in the right direction and that we're all getting the result that we're looking for collectively. So sometimes project manager, sometimes program manager, sometimes global program manager. But at the end of the day, it's bringing in to have someone come in and really focus on that, looking at the macro, organizing the chaos,
Yeah.
getting that perspective of, hey, have you thought about this? How can we make this better? At the end of the day, for me, it's all about how do you support your people? Because an
Yeah.
organization really isn't anything, it's a collection of a ton of people. So, how do you get those people? And again, it's not always equal, right? So, some
No.
people are going to need different levels of support than others. So, it's that macro view so typically at a point of change.
Wow. 10,000 people. That is like a huge undertaking. How long did that take you to get them all like up to speed?
We had 1 year to get all 10,000 people
Ooh,
trained, and this was a big stakes impact because it was like money on the table. If they didn't know how to properly use the system, so that was a system integration. If they didn't know how to use the system, you're talking about major stock loss,
yeah,
money, financial impact. And so, but the rollout, the sheer rollout of 10,000 people, and that one was just in the US alone, whereas some ones there's another one I did where there was, 10 countries involved. So you have multiple languages, you have multiple culture issues
wow.
and changes happening. And are you in regulation with all the countries? Because there's also legal part of it. So again, it's that looking through that bigger lens. And one of my favorite ones was a smaller one. It was 3,000 people in 5 countries. And it was going through this major culture transformation of their values. They're like, what do we
So
value as a company?
hold on, just so that the audience knows, like, what is a culture transformation? What does that
Sure.
mean?
No, great point. So the culture transfer, that one was they are in the pharmaceutical world. And in the US and the pharmaceutical world, there's been lots of lawsuits and all of that fun stuff. So they were going through a lot of friction. And so what they identified was we want to roll out, we've grown too fast. So culture transformation means a few different things depending, but for this specific case, they had grown really fast. They were dealing with a lot of different situations at the time. And they said, we need to go back to basics and figure out what are the 5 values that represent our company? What are the five
Yeah,
values that are really what we want our people to exhibit, to live, to breathe? And
yeah,
how do you roll that out across 5 different countries where a word might mean a different thing in a different culture, right? And so, how do you get those 5 key values and come together collectively as 3,000 people in 5 countries? How do you come together and get them? So, what we did was we figured out how do we roll them out so people are aware of them? How do
yeah,
we make sure people are living them? How do we make sure to keep people motivated and engaged? Because again, you get busy, you get in your work, you're working, and then the nice to haves kind of fall away. So, it's how do you keep reinforcing it and encouraging people and bringing people back to the table? And are our people, I say our, but it was the client. But
yeah.
when I partner with people,
Well,
so I
yeah, I
become
mean, I
part of
think
the
when you take on a
team.
project, you kind of own it
Yeah.
a little bit.
How are
Yeah,
we living that? Do we
yeah,
really embody those values, and how do we keep people motivated? So for that one, the culture transformation was they wanted to go back to basics and identify could people even name it? A lot of companies have like a tagline, like they
yeah.
have their
Mission
whatever
statement.
their tagline is.
Yeah,
If you asked a layperson, like any person in the company, okay, can you tell us what our company mantra is? How many do you think could actually answer it?
they didn't have it. Yeah,
They're not going to be able to do it. And some of them,
yeah,
it's like a pair, or what's the company's vision? What's the
right.
company's vision? We should all know that for the companies we're working for, but a lot
Yeah,
of times we don't know what it is, right?
yeah,
And it sounds good on a wall or on a quote,
yeah,
but if people don't can't even tell you, if you bump into someone in your company and say, "What's our company mantra?" or if a new person just got hired and said, "What's our company mantra?" And if someone has to say, let's look it up, then
yeah,
it's not being effective. It's not
yeah.
being used, and it's not being used as a pillar of this is what good looks like and this is what we represent.
So, how long did that one take you to integrate or to
That was a fun one.
massage?
So, and this has been almost textbook, like for pretty much every client I've ever been in. They're like, we just need like a project manager for like 20 hours a week for like, I don't know, 4 months maybe. And then come to find out, it's this huge major transformation, right,
Yeah,
that's happening. So they ended up extending me. I built the relationship, and 3.5 years later, I
three and a
still work
half.
with that client today. Different capacity, different things,
Right,
but it's
sure.
but it definitely took longer than that. So the full culture transformation, it was about a 15-month process
Yeah.
to create the awareness, to create the habit, to get people motivated on board, to reconcile the people who were there, because there was also a lot of that we've always done it this way
Yeah, of
mentality, and
course. Yeah.
so that's not how we're going to do it in the future. So if then maybe you're not aligned with where the values are, and maybe this is not the right place anymore. So it was about 15 months. It was about 15
Yeah.
months of a journey, and yeah, so it's always fun.
I feel like something like that, a project like that, like you say, you're still working with that client, actually opens up other avenues where they need someone to help fit because it's like a domino effect, right?
Yeah.
Once you like do this cultural transformation, then you uncover other areas that need
Exactly.
massaging or whatever you
And
want
now
to.
what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's like now they maybe uncovered other things that they need to work on. So I feel like when companies are starting to better themselves and create a better environment for their employees and their teams, that there is going to be things that they're going to find out along the way.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And like, so we had one where they called me up in July, and this is the one I actually visited Chicago
Oh,
for. So
okay.
they called me up in July and they said, "Help, we have 500 people flying in from all over the US, and they're coming in December on these dates. What are we training them on?" I said, "Okay,
Whoa.
that's a little backwards, but okay, we can do that." And so,
Yeah.
I was like, rolled up my sleeves. All right, let's go. Like, let's figure out where are they now? Where do they need to be? What can we pull together? They had a 4-day event that they were pulling everyone in. And it was the first time they were ever doing it. They'd already identified the 500 people. They already knew the dates, but they had no idea what they were training them on, what they were doing with them.
Whoa.
So I had
Okay.
like 4 months on that one, and that was, yeah. So it's always fun.
I bet. And you probably learn a lot, like just going into all these different. Is there one key element that all companies share that they need to look at? I'm just
Yeah.
curious.
Here's the one. Here's the trend for all of them.
Yeah. Okay.
The first time I get on the phone with them, and even afterwards, they always say, "Well, our company's different, how we do things. Everyone thinks they're different, but people are people." And like,
Yeah.
if I could just, yes, there are certain specific challenges to that industry
Yeah.
or that specific group is dealing with, of course, and you have to take that into account. But overall, every single client always says, "We're very different." And it's not. And it's
Yeah.
so I have 2 degrees in psychology. I also have my master's in industrial organizational psychology. And one of the things that they talk about in psychology and especially in abnormal psychology is, people think that they're alone in what they're feeling or what they're going through.
Yep.
And a lot of times, especially in this world, in this connected world, we know we can find another person in the world that either for better or worse, shares that belief or whatever. But you're not alone. Your company's not alone in the problems you're solving. And there is so much transferable skills that comes from, a lot of times they'll say, "Oh, oh, well, I see you've never worked with healthcare," which I have, but oh, healthcare is very specific. At the end of the day, people are people. And so I would say the one common thing is everyone thinks they're different,
Yeah.
but they're not as different as they think they are.
Yeah. Yeah. I would agree with that. I don't, a company is a company is a company. And the only thing that can makes up a company is your people, and
Yeah.
it's like you have to give, yeah. I mean, I could see that. You mentioned AI, like that's a new thing. And so are you taking on projects with people that are implementing AI into their process flow?
Yeah, so
And what,
we actually have a new branch at GTDS that's focused, specialized on AI. I am not your AI person, I promise you
okay.
that. It is not me, but we do have a new branch and division that's focused on that because again, what we do at the end of the day is learning and development, implementation, right? And so
Yeah.
part of this, and I just came off of a conference with 20,000 people from all over the world,
Great.
and everything is AI this and AI that, but it's really, really fascinating because of all the talk, you think it's much more widely accepted or known. And out of LinkedIn, so LinkedIn polled, and I trust LinkedIn's numbers, they're saying that only 9% of companies worldwide, 9% have either an idea on AI of an actual process plan and map
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
are
Yeah.
actually doing it. 9% of
That's pretty
all
low.
companies around the world. When I heard that, I was shocked, honestly,
Yeah.
because you hear AI this and AI that. And I was blown away by that figure. And this was back in May. And I say that because it's been a couple months and we know how fast things are moving in the
Yeah.
AI world. But if you feel like you're behind or you feel like, "Oh, I don't know what's happening with this," you're not as far behind as you think.
Yeah.
And also, the thing that they emphasized was that if you are an early adapter and you are even thinking about it, you're more ahead than you think you are. So GTS does have a branch that specializes and focuses on that because, again, it's a very similar skill set of identifying where the company is at, right? Identifying
Yeah.
where they're at, analyzing it, figuring out what they need to be successful, figuring out how to roll it out properly, how to evaluate if it's successful, how to evaluate the return on investment that you're putting in and that your people are putting into it. So it's a very similar thing. We just have AI people who are specialized in like the AI
Sure.
topic, but it's very similar to the GTDS model. We have, a specific process and templates we follow based off of few decades now of this work with clients of what's worked well, how do we analyze, how do we help them manage successfully, and how do we help them evaluate?
That would be a very interesting project just to be a fly on the wall to see like how the culture shock would be with people that are resistant to AI.
Mhm.
Now, I love it for things that I do because it helps refine my message, helps correct any spelling and grammar errors, and like I've really embraced it for workflow for the things that I do. But I'm in the media, so it helps me. So but I know that a lot of people are very scared of it and very resistant. So, you have many different generations of people in a company. And so it would just be very interesting to know like how something like that would go, just to like
Yeah.
kind of like survey it and see like what that looks like. So maybe we'll have to have like a follow-up and get like a report from you.
Yeah, for sure. And one of the things I love that I took away from that for any of you that are thinking a similar thing is I actually did a certification on learning development for AI because, of course, I want to
Sure.
continuous improvement, continuous
Yeah.
learning on my part. And that's not my world, but I want to scale up on it. And the instructor was amazing. And she has a mantra, she has like a tag that she talks about is like human, AI, human. So a lot of people think like, oh, AI is going to replace us, or
No.
AI can do everything for us.
Nope.
Not true. You have
Nope.
to your point of messaging for media, right? So you might type a message first, you put it through AI, see how they enhance it,
Yep.
but then you need to go back in and make it yours and edit
Yep.
it, right? And so that's
Absolutely.
the formula is human, AI, human. And I love that formula. And I keep reminding even senior leaders with these large organizations I'm talking about, they're thinking, oh, well, we can be so efficient and we can replace this and we can do that. Nope, you
Yeah.
still need a human person
Yeah.
dealing with making it human and making it
Yeah.
human to other people. So human, AI, human.
Yeah, because if you just type like something in there and don't give it any direction or don't review it, it will sound ridiculous.
Or worse, people who don't know. So this is my biggest fear. People who don't know the answer will put it in instead of Googling it, will put it into ChatGPT or
Yeah,
whatever and accept it as face value. But you have to check because there's times where they give you completely wrong information, but they say it so confidently, you're like, oh, of course this is the answer. So again, it's one of those things where we need to be mindful and we need to be helping. Yeah.
and have critical thought. Hello,
Yes.
use your
Yes.
brain.
Yes. Yes. Check, validate, verify. Yes.
Amanda, where can people find you, connect with you, and learn more with working with GTDS?
Yep. So www.gtdscorp.com. And there's a place to reach out directly. If you are a consultant and you love working with clients, reach out because we're always looking for great people for our clients.
Okay.
If you're a potential client where you're hearing what we're talking about, you're like, oh, we could really benefit from some analysis and strategy, would love to connect with you and see how we may be able to help you and take you to the next level.
Yeah, I love it. I think it's awesome. Congratulations on all your success and what you're doing to improve companies overall with culture, process, leadership. I think it's great. I don't think that we could ever get enough help when it comes to that because people are just get so lost and they just kind of forget what it means to value their employees and you know what I mean? Like it's shocking in 2025 we're still having leadership
I'll
problems. Like
have
come
this
on.
conversation. And that's the funny thing is that, I really don't see it as, yes, I help companies, but I don't see it that way. I help people.
Yeah.
So because if their companies are doing better for them, then they're going to be better off too.
Yeah.
So for me, it's all about the people. And I'm constantly reminding senior leadership, regardless of the client, okay, but how is that going to impact your person, your people, your workforce?
Yeah, I love
People
that.
first, always.
Yeah, amen to that. You guys, I'm gonna put her links in the show notes. So if you connected with her, know somebody that needs to meet Amanda, don't hesitate to go click the links, go follow her on LinkedIn and send her a message. I'm sure she would love to connect with you. Amanda, this is the part of the show where I like to ask for last words of wisdom or advice. What would you like to leave with us today?
Before we started the recording, we were talking a little bit about mindset, and I just think that that's more important than anything you hear or do. Everything your world is a reflection of your brain, and I'm just getting into this more and more recently, but I would say, mindset is so powerful and just check your mindset, look up mindset stuff and hacks because again, that's going to make you the most successful you can be. It starts with
Amen.
you. It starts with the way you're thinking about the world.
Yes, and be honest with yourself. You got to be honest with yourself when it comes to that mindset so that you can get yourself on the right path and stay focused on your goals because sometimes I think we lie to ourselves. You
Or we're
know?
unaware. It's first
Yeah.
step is knowing, right? First
Yeah.
step is even knowing and being aware of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Great. I love it. Amanda, thank you so much for being such an incredible guest today and sharing some of your stories and some of your expertise with improving the workplace. And I like that culture transformation. I love that. I think that was a a great thing to highlight. So thank you so much for being with us today. We appreciate you.
Thanks for having me.
You guys, this is your host, Deanna Radulescu with Label Free. To live your best life, you must live label free. As always, don't forget to subscribe, follow, rate, review, comment, share, all those good things. And I'll be back soon with more dynamic guests.